Hi everyone and welcome to the High Frequency podcast. For the 6th episode, I welcome our first international guest, Daniel Cuda. Daniel is a DJ and producer from Melbourne, Australia, and I've been following his music and his record label for some time now. He has had releases on the likes of Circuit Tracks, Toolroom, Circus Recordings, and of course his own label, Milk Crate. It was great to chat with Dan about the scene in Melbourne and all things production, and he's done a fantastic mix for us at the end of this podcast where he showcases some of his own music and of course some of the music that he's released on his label. I hope you all enjoyed the chat with Daniel Cuda. So Dan, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, dude.
It's actually quite exciting having our first international guest on the podcast. I guess I've kind of been following Dan for quite some time, and I've really liked a lot of his music in the past. I've bought quite a bit of it and played it out, and it's always worked really well. And the fact that he's only over in Melbourne was quite cool. I thought we could probably get him on without the time difference being too much of a struggle. So this is really cool. So Dan, welcome, and how's your week been going so far? All good?
Yeah, pretty good, man. I'm honestly pretty tired. I don't know about you. I mean, you would obviously be aware of the Queen's birthday, but Monday was a long weekend for us here in Australia. Probably was it a long weekend for you guys as well?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So it was literally just like partying. Yeah, there like every like long weekend. There's like, every promoter kind of puts on their own party, and like I was fortunate enough to be playing for a few different promoters over the weekend, and considering this is like going to be the last public holiday in Australia, or like in Victoria rather, for a little while, I made the most of the opportunity. So yeah.
Nice, man. I think it's a funny thing really with those long weekends. Like you tend to get 2 or 3 gigs, and then it tends to take you a week to recover. But yeah, you've got gigs the following week. I know you're gigging quite a lot at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I guess I'm fortunate in that respect. It's mainly because I've been doing it for quite a long time, like locally. I've just made up like a lot of connections, and like I'm friends with a lot of people that throw parties. So I get hit up to play gigs fairly regularly, which I enjoy doing. I get to play a variety of different sounds as well. It's not only my productions, like depending on what the party is, like whether it's on a public holiday or if it's just like a weekly club night, and depending on like the venue and the typical crowd, you kind of have to like cater to the dance floor. So I guess that's it can be humbling in a little bit of in a way, because you're not really just going out there and playing your own music or like your own sound every time you jump behind the decks. You kind of have to cater to other people, and you learn like dance floor habits, and it kind of translates to producing a little bit as well, because you might have like a string of gigs that are all completely different, but there might be uh, like a few like commonalities across all of them, where like a particular style of track might have been really popular, and then that might just be something to like keep in mind when you're sitting in front of like the DAW, like jamming out tunes. So
Yeah. I think so. I talked about a bit about this on the last podcast that I did with the previous guest, and we were talking a little bit about some of the newer artists and DJs coming in, forgetting that it is a job at the end of the day. Like it's the best job in the world. Like you get to get paid to party and drink. I mean, what's better than that? But I think a lot of these newer DJs tend to forget that it's not about playing your tunes. You've really got to cater for the people on the dance floor. And I guess you've been doing it for so long now that you've actually been able to develop that skill. But how long did it take you to develop that kind of skill?
um, yeah, that's a good question. I kind of don't really know. I feel like I've only really become aware of that more recently. I've probably been DJing, um, like playing out in like venues, maybe the past, I don't know, like 5 or 6 years, like sort of more seriously. I mean, I started DJing when I was 18, and I'm 26 now, so that's like 8 years. But like obviously COVID took 2 years away from that, and then like starting out, like I probably didn't really have too many gigs in venues when I was like 18 and 19. So yeah, I didn't really have the awareness early on. I guess it just comes from you develop that skill playing like a variety of different gigs, like playing to like different crowds, like different settings, different times of day. Um, but then I guess it's also important to like understand that there's a difference between like the whole like local DJing side of things, and then like what's like a more legitimate gig from like an artist perspective. Um, like yeah, obviously, yeah, this is the best job in the world, but like yeah, you still got to pay the bills. You might be fortunate enough to be playing like a lot of really cool nightclubs around the country and like festivals and big events supporting big art like international artists, but then like in the weeks where the internationals aren't in the country or there aren't really many parties that suit your like an artist's particular sound, then like what are you supposed to do, like not eat for a week? Like you kind of have
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
yeah, you definitely have to like sort of find a way to make it work. And it's really interesting, like a lot of really big artists that are really good DJs start out doing like the exact same thing. Like they do the whole like local circuit, or like they take on like a bunch of bar gigs during the week, like earn like maybe like 600-700 bucks so they can pay their rent, pay their bills, and then they might have like a proper like artist gig on the like on the weekend or every couple of weeks. That's kind of more of like an artistic expression. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
No, no, absolutely, man. I think it's really important, and I think because I did it when I lived in Sydney for a little while, and I took on commercial gigs there throughout the week at bars all the time, and that was my only source of income because I was traveling at the time, right? So I didn't want to play those commercial gigs. I didn't want to. I wanted to play club music in a club. But of course, I didn't have those connections rooted in Sydney to be able to play those gigs. So I kind of saw it as an opportunity to be able to develop a skill rather than just in one music genre, but to be able to develop a skill right across different genres and understand the people that's dancing in front of you. So I think it's really important. I think it's a good skill to not turn down gigs.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. Plus, I think it's also a really good networking tool, especially when you're kind of when you're starting from the bottom in like your like a hometown, or like especially if you live in like a big city where there are a lot of venues. There might be a particular venue you're looking to play at, and like the owner of the venue or like a venue manager or like whoever um, might have an association with like a smaller bar or some other venue that's a little more accessible, and that's kind of like also a good way to like get your foot in the door, meet people, do a little bit of networking. Yeah, like that aspect of it's huge, and it's totally underplayed as well. So
Agreed completely. I think I kind of took because I'm 35 this year, and I took quite a long time off the club scene and the DJing scene, and I'm finding it quite difficult to get back on it because I've lost a lot of those connections, and at the same time. When I go out, I sometimes feel too old to be out, but
mm.
that's just all completely in my head. But yeah, couldn't agree more about the connections. This face to face thing that we've been deprived of this last 2 years is so invaluable, and we can't rely on social media to create those connections all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I've noticed that as well. Even like after the lockdowns kind of ended in Melbourne, going back to the clubs and the venues that I was playing at regularly. Uh, Obviously, all the familiar faces are always like happy to see you, and it's kind of like nothing changes. But there were a lot of people that dropped off, that
Yeah,
just like left the industry in general. They just found other jobs and just were happy doing other things, getting away from like nightlife and like the music industry. So yeah, like having to deal with a bunch of fresh faces that are in like positions of power that kind of um, like it was almost like starting again in a weird way, because like you spend time developing these relationships so that you can like leverage them in the future, to like get yourself gigs, and so you have an easier time like getting into a venue, and so you can like go out on let's say on your own, or like when you just feel like going out, and you've got like familiar faces that you can kind of just like there are people that you're familiar with that you can speak to, and actually like build up like friendships. Like yeah, I found I had to kind of start again a little bit as well, despite the fact that I've sort of been doing it for um, almost a decade. So
Yeah, absolutely, man. So usually I start the podcast by asking the guest to give a bit of an elevator pitch on who they are and and what they do. But I guess we got stuck into the conversation then. So Dan, tell us a little bit about who Daniel Cuda is and how you've got to where you are today.
yeah, well, I mean, like Daniel Cuda's me. It's my real name and it's my artist name. Um, yeah, I'm based in Melbourne. I write house music. Uh, oh yeah, I guess like sort of like minimal like tech house. I guess you would kind of describe it. Um, I run a record label called Milk Crate, which has been around for 5 years this year, which is really exciting. I run that with some high school friends, and the label kind of came about just as like a little bit of an outlet for us. We all each kind of have different skills that we contribute, and it gives us an opportunity to like throw parties, release music that we're all writing and that we're really happy with. Like, um, yeah, like the label's like been a fantastic outlet for that. And then that links to my brand pretty like they the labels like the labels brand and my brand tied together pretty closely now as well. So a lot of what I do is backed by sort of what the label's doing and vice versa. Um, yeah, I mean in terms of like the tunes I'm writing, yeah, like minimal tech house kind of stuff. I don't know how big my sound is locally. There's definitely like a little bit of a market for it, but nowhere near as big as it is overseas, particularly in the UK, um, uh, and like parts of Europe, like Italy and Spain. So yeah, that's a really interesting uh, challenge for me, like sort of having to navigate like sort of like what I was talking about earlier, like local, my local scene here in Australia, like being able to like play the music I like to play, um, or like being able to play the music I make, but then also like finding a balance between like like what's really what is club culture locally in Australia, and then like what I like to do. So that's kind of I find myself often like sort of like going back and forth between the two a little bit more than I'd like to be doing. Like sometimes I'll like you might hear a mix or like a tune come from me that's a little more like like chunkier drums and it's a little more like tech house, like sort of standard tech house, and then some stuff that's like a little deeper or a little more like stripped back and groove sort of oriented. So yeah, to answer your question, I guess that's me. I'm kind of just like a little bit all over the place.
Cool, man. No, I love it. And I guess I actually discovered your music, funnily enough, on a YouTube video on a Relo mix.
Oh no way! What tune was that?
It was oh shit, I can't remember the name of it, and I own it. Wide, yeah, it
Oh
was
yeah,
Wide.
yeah.
Did you send him that as a promo?
No, I didn't. I don't know how he got that.
Ah, true. That's amazing.
I mean, it
Yeah,
did pretty well on Beatport. Maybe that's how he probably saw it in the chart and was just like, "Oh yeah,
I think
I'll
this was
use."
before it was released though, because like I was trying to find it everywhere. Like in the comment section, there was guys asking for it, and I was just like, "Fuck, what is this track?"
Oh really? Oh
Yeah,
shit! You got
true.
to send me a link to this. I don't think I sent it to him. I definitely sent it out to a few people. Maybe I did. Maybe he did get it from me. I don't know. I honestly have no idea. So what I like to promo stuff that I've made that I'm kind of that I sit on for a little while and that I think could potentially have legs. I like do my own promo for it. Just try to get it to artists I like or artists I think might be into it. Um, so maybe he got his hands on it that way. Otherwise, maybe somebody I know might have sent it to him on my behalf. Yeah, I'm really not sure, but I'm curious to find out how this came about because yeah, no, I've seen him play my stuff. Like I've seen him play that tune in like Instagram videos and stuff, and I thought maybe he got his hands on it after it was released. But yeah, it's actually wicked.
Yeah. It was pretty cool. I mean, to be honest with you, I've kind of gone off his own music for what he's been making recently. It's gone kind of. He's doing a lot of a cappella stuff, which I'm not a massive fan of. But his old stuff was brutal, man. I loved it. It was great. But
Mm.
yeah, I saw your track on there, and I was like, "Fuck, this is so groovy. It's awesome." And it's got like an old school Northern Soul house
Yeah,
sample in it or something. And
it's a
well,
Janet Jackson sample.
that's right,
So
Janet Jackson. Yeah,
a few
yeah.
people have used the sample, and I felt a little weird releasing the song because like I wrote this song for gigs. Like the vocals like pretty catchy and it's kind of recognizable. I actually wrote it like specifically for a string of New Year's gigs I had in maybe it was like the end of 2020. I honestly cannot remember. I think it came out. Did it come out last year?
It was
I think it. Did, I
20
think it did come out last
2021.
year. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would have made it end of 2020. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Or like yeah, sort of towards the end of 2020. Um, and yeah, I basically just like wrote the track around the vocal. So like what you described that you don't really like about Relo anymore is kind of how this song came about. And
Mm.
to be totally honest with you, I kind of I don't really claim it as my song totally because it's not an original vocal. It kind of relies on the sample a little too heavily. So yeah, I kind of I believe credit is important. Like credit where it's due, especially because the vocal is such an important part of the track. So the track wouldn't be what it is without that vocal. So yeah,
The bass line's still pretty sick, though, to be fair.
yeah, no, it is.
So, what label was that released on?
It was released on a local label, Circa Tracks. They're based in Melbourne.
Yeah.
They're the label's run by two friends of mine. Like the head and like A&R is Eli Berry.
Oh, yeah.
He's an expat as well. I don't know where he's from in the UK, but he's been in Australia for like decades, and
Cool.
yeah, he's like a really big um uh what's the word? Um, I guess he's just like a really big ambassador for like house music, particularly like house music with like a UK flavor, like in Australia and in Melbourne in particular. And yeah, like Circuit Tracks is a yeah, it's one of the only other labels like sort of besides Milk Crate that is pushing I guess like yeah different sounds here in Melbourne. So
Cool. Yeah, I got a nice follow off Circa Tracks the other day, and I was like, oh, yeah, okay.
yeah, nice.
um, so, in terms of labels, then, so tell us a bit about yours, because you've been running Milk Crate for 5 years. Are you involved with any other labels?
Yeah, I am. Like firstly, Milk Crate wasn't the first label I started. I started a label when I was like fresh 18 because I just needed like an outlet to release my music and nobody would sign. I didn't have any problem signing my music, but obviously, like any artist, it's kind of it's challenging, like having to like demo a bunch of labels and then 90% of them might come back with like a no, and then you've got to wait for release dates and this and that and whatever. Like it was, I kind of at the time, um, I thought it would be a good idea to start a label. I kind of regret it a little bit now, and I've learned a lot since that first label. But yeah, Milk Crate came about when um, I guess I was a little bit more sure of myself as an artist and the kind of music I wanted to be making and the kind of genres like I wanted my artist brand to be associated with. So um, yeah, but I got together with friends of mine and we had started that one there. Aside from Milk Crate, I run another label with a friend of mine from Canada. So his artist name is Vax. He's like yeah, doing pretty well in like tech house. Yeah, him and I have been like longtime friends and collaborators. I think both of us had our first big releases together. Like they were all collaborations. Like we had a single on Tour Room, single on Glasgow Underground. What else? I know we've done so many collabs. I've honestly lost track. But like when we signed to like GU and to Tour Room, that was like a really big deal for us. So
Yeah, man, that's
yeah,
huge.
getting to share that was definitely. yeah, it's probably one of the things that helped, I guess, like cement our friendship. Um, and yeah, like working, we work together all the time. We speak almost every day. Running the label's fantastic as well. Yeah, Wasted's doing really well at the moment. I think we started that up as a little bit of a COVID like lockdown project, and yeah, it's really started to take off. We've had like a lot of really cool releases and yeah, chart success. So yeah, it's Milk Crate and Wasted. That's what I'm sort of focusing. Those are the two labels that I'm working with at the moment.
Cool, man. Sounds good. I'll come back to the label in a bit because obviously I'd like to talk about that a bit more. But I just want to go back to something you said earlier on because you were talking a little bit about the scene in Melbourne, and in particular, obviously, the fact that you can't push your sound as much as you would like to. Considering where I live at the moment, which has very little house music scene, it's very big drum and bass over here. I find it very, very challenging to push that kind of sound. Um, People are open to it, but I always thought Melbourne had a really good house music scene because there's Sash there as well, and Sasha doing amazing parties and bringing some headliners over from Europe and stuff. So, what's the general scene like there?
Yeah. Okay. Well, Sash originated in Sydney, and they're kind of like so for that particular sound, they're definitely like at the top. Um, their their parties are like legendary, and I think they're like pretty well known all over Australia now. Um, what is a little unfortunate, they do parties in Melbourne, and their parties are kick ass. But what's a little unfortunate, and I guess this is just a reflection of how different the scene is in Sydney compared to Melbourne, is that a lot of the internationals that they tour don't come to Melbourne, which is a bit of a bummer. Like there was an artist recently that came that I was disappointed didn't come to Melbourne. But like yeah, I could name so many that you would be like familiar with. Like Josh Baker, he had an Australian tour not long ago. He didn't come to Melbourne.
Did he not
Um,
play at the Sydney? The was it the 10th birthday for Sash?
no, no, the 10th.
Oh
I
no, it
think
might not have been the 10th. I can't remember
no,
what year
but
it was.
they had yeah they did have a big birthday, like a string of birthday parties
That's right.
in
Yeah.
Melbourne and in Sydney. I think Melbourne, Sydney, maybe somewhere in Queensland. I can't remember, but they had they had a few internationals. I think each party had about 10 or 12. Like Suban, is that how you pronounce it? He came down for that. James Dexter was here. Th-
Kepler, I think, was there as
yeah,
well.
yeah, he was at the
Yeah.
party too.
Yeah.
I can't remember if Rich Next played.
I think he played the. I
Or
don't
he
think
was
he
here
played the
for
breakfast
another event.
show.
Yeah,
He
I'm
played
not
the
sure.
day party, I think, for Sash.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
sure, but yeah, that party was kick ass.
Yeah, man. Did you go to that?
No, I didn't. I was gigging, unfortunately.
Ah, Brown.
I had like I had a class. There was so much on in Melbourne that weekend. It was like I was so bummed out. But Saban played at another venue on like a day later, so I caught that, and that was sick. I didn't get to see James Dexter. I'm a really big fan of his.
He's producing some good music, man. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
he's definitely honed in on his sound, and I think his production's so unique. It's so simple, but it's like it stands out. You could just like you could pick out a James Dexter track from like a mile away. So
Agreed. Yeah, yeah.
um, yeah, and yeah, it's like it just like it sounds. You could play it at almost, I mean, some of his tunes you could play it almost any time of the night, and it would just work. Like they work earlier, they work later on. They got like really cool grooves. Yeah, he's an artist I draw a lot of inspiration from, actually.
Nice. Cool,
But
man.
yeah, sorry to get back onto the topic of the question that you asked. Um, I mean, Melbourne definitely does have a thriving house music scene. I guess it's. I mean, like the issue is that it's like any local scene. You kind of deal with all like the typical like local politics, and every promoter is kind of acting like everybody's like self-interested, like as they should be. Like the promoters are the ones that are taking on the risk and throwing on the parties, so like they have every right to throw whatever party they want to throw. um I guess from like a music perspective, and I think I mentioned this earlier, there's a little bit of a difference between like local DJing and like local parties, and then like what's more like the music and like the production side of things. We don't really have a lot of parties that are focused on like the music or like a particular sound. there are like a few parties and a few promoters and venues here and there that are really interested in pushing like music that they like, but it's not like a widespread thing. And it's probably the same in like every big city. I guess the difference being like Melbourne and Sydney are like small international cities, whereas like cities like if you were to look to places in Europe or like the UK, there are their scenes are so much bigger because like the population's bigger. So there are and I guess the people that have the control maybe came from like maybe their origins a little bit different. Like I know a lot of promoters in the UK who also run labels and are writing their own music or that are connected to people that are writing their own music. So I guess that's probably like a big difference here. I can't really think of many um, like venue owners or promoters that are. I mean, a lot of them started out as DJs, but none of them that like I can't really think of many that started out as like artists. So um, yeah, like I guess I think there's a big distinction between like DJing and like the music production. They kind of they get linked together, but they're kind of not. Um, and I guess that's a mistake a lot of people make when they're starting out. So like for an artist starting out in Melbourne, trying to find like a, a cool like venue where they can hang out and hear music they like, I think it's often challenging, and that's definitely something that I probably like. That's probably something I had like sort of come across, became aware of pretty early on as well. Like being like a 18, 19-year-old kid into like a particular type of house music, you go out trying to find clubs and parties that are doing that, and like you kind of find it but not really. So unless you like grew up worshipping your local scene, I don't think there's real and there actually are a lot of people in Melbourne that do that. They kind of grow up really into like what's happening locally. Um, like I guess you go out for the first time and you don't really, it doesn't align with your expectations, and you don't really have a good, like for me, for as an example, I never really started having a good time going out until I was like seeing internationals come over and like seeing my favorite artists play and having like a different kind of experience. So um, yeah, there is a scene and it's really cool. Like there's a lot going on, but yeah, it's so small. So like regardless of what like music you're into, there definitely is something for you here. It's just like there might just be like only one of that, like one of each thing, or like maybe just like a handful of each thing. So it's not like you can go to one place and have one experience and then go somewhere similar and have a slightly different experience and then sort of be able to like decide on which one you think's better, which one you're more comfortable with. It's just like one's cool, like you've got one choice, and if it's cool, it's cool. If you don't have like the best time, or if the party or like the environment's not really what you're looking for, then it's just tough luck. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You should start your own milk crate party.
yeah, well we have been, we do throw parties every now and again. Yeah, it's just so difficult like finding the time that like that works. Like Melbourne is such a small, we have such a small population, and there are so many like nightclubs and events on every single weekend. So like even like for like our like milk crate crew, there have been like nights where we've like planned a party and then we've had like a handful of our punters not come because there's been like a big international that has a little bit more of like they've just got more pull than our party does, which is just, it's totally understandable because I'd kind of be doing the same thing if it was like somebody else throwing
Yeah.
a party and they wanted me to go. Um, so yeah, I mean we do throw parties, and we are looking to sort of kick off more. We want to be throwing more parties more regularly. We were throwing parties really regularly before COVID happened, but yeah, since then, I guess the focus of the label has changed slightly. We've kind of gone back to the music as opposed to like sort of signing artists and finding artists rather than like working with like a smaller pool of artists and having like sort of uh, more frequent releases from them. Um, so yeah, our focus has kind of changed. So the parties have kind of had to take a little bit of a backseat for the time being. But um, yeah, it's definitely on the horizon, especially considering with our 5 year anniversary coming up. We do want to throw a string of 5 year birthday parties for the label. So
Nice, man. Yeah. Cool. That sounds good. So going back to your own productions then, so have you got any upcoming releases that you can tell us about?
Uh, I don't know. I definitely do have a lot of upcoming releases. I just don't know what I can talk about.
Yeah.
I mentioned this on like another interview where I've had stuff signed in the past that has fallen through, and like you mentioned a release publicly and then it never ends up happening, and you kind of just like. I mean, not that anybody really cares, but like say you listen back or somebody listens back like 6 months later, and like they look like I don't know. It just kind of it's just one of those things you just don't. I prefer not to talk about something unless it's locked in. And the only releases I know that are locked in are like milk crate releases because I've got full control of those. So
Yeah, sure.
yeah, there's upcoming. There's the milk crate 5 year VA which you're on as well. I've got a tune on that too, so I'm really excited about that one there. Um, Following that one there, I've got another single on milk crate. It'll be my second single this year, I think. I did Maya in January, and then I had a tune on an earlier VA. So, um, yeah, I mean, I guess technically it's my fourth, but it's like my second, like actual like standalone single for the year. So that'll have a remix on it. Um, what else is there? I don't. I've signed a collaboration with a friend of mine on the from the Gold Coast, Latour. He's a really cool DJ and producer. We just had a collab come out on Circus Recordings, like the UK, uh, what's his name, Yusuf's label.
Yeah, Yusuf.
I
Yeah,
always
yeah,
struggle to say his name, so I just have to kind of think about it for a second. But
yeah.
yeah, which I was like so stoked about. I was not expecting him to sign that.
It's pretty huge, man.
Yeah, it's definitely like a bucket list label. Yeah, that came out last week, so that kind of I can sort of ride the wave of that release for a little while until until the 5 year VA comes out, and then the Milk Crate one, the Milk Crate single following that. So yeah, I do have other stuff in the like sort of in the pipeline that's been signed, but like I've got no idea what the release dates are for those, so I'm just praying there's no clashes.
I think that's the problem these days, that releases take so long to come out at the moment, don't they? Has it always been this way?
Yeah,
Like,
it's ridiculous. It's always taken a while, but it's definitely taking longer now. Like I had something come out. There's an EP I signed to a local label like 14 months ago that I still have no idea when it's coming out. What else was there? Like that, like what have you done? You know, like WH, um, whatever it is, WHYD. That's what the title of that track should be. By the way, it's supposed to be in capitals, but yeah, it doesn't matter. That was I was waiting for that to come out for like almost a year. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's it always takes a long time, but it's definitely taking a lot longer now.
hmm.
And I understand the frustration from an artist level because I deal with it so much. So when I get demos or when I sign demos, like sometimes I have the artists hitting me up like 2 3 times before it comes out, like, hey, when's this coming out? Be like, oh, like I have to kind of just I give them it like I tell them the date and they're like, what the hell? Why is it so long? And you kind of just have to explain like that's just the way it works. Um, and like it's totally understandable. Like Milk Crate's a pretty like we're an independent label, so we're dealing with everything ourselves. If you look at some of like the bigger artist run independent labels, they're dealing with so much more than there are so many more moving parts. Like take Circus for example, they like they throw parties like so regularly, and now they're coming into like the like summer in the northern hemisphere, so they would be geared up for like so many events. Um, Yusuf would have so much on as well. Like he would have releases linked to um, like his like gigs or like maybe stuff that's like set to come out and to sort of work in conjunction with like his tour or like string of gigs over Europe or the UK or whatever. So like I'm not too sure that's I'm just trying to like think of an example of why labels would take so long. There's just like so many things to manage, so it can create a little bit of a backlog.
Yeah, I think as well. I've heard a lot of the record labels that press on vinyl have taken a lot longer as well because the pressing plants have been so delayed and they've been short on particular materials and supplies and stuff during all the lockdowns. So I'm sure that's just exacerbated everything, to be honest.
Yeah, it absolutely has. I've heard that as well. We were actually looking to do like milk rate vinyl releases, and when we found out what some of the wait times were going to be for like 4 releases, sorry, just for like a test press, we were like, it's probably not even worth it because like by the time you actually like get the record, like a particular record, to a level where it's ready to be like pressed, like you go through the whole process of like doing the test press and creating like the stamping like the stamping plate or whatever it is. But yeah, it would just take so long. By the time a release is ready to come out, like after it gets pressed, it's just like it's probably like 6. When we were looking at it, it was going to be like 6 to 8 months after. We were kind of just like, there's no
Oh
point.
shit! Really? Wow.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're a label that prioritizes like vinyl, like your vinyl releases, like if you have like a strong connection to like vinyl DJing, or if that's kind of like there are a lot of UK labels that were really big on that at a particular point. So um, like Shall Not Fade is like an example of that. I think they had a lot of releases that were vinyl only for a long time. I think like Morgrab's label, I think his first few releases were vinyl only, which I think is really cool. But it's definitely like um, I guess it's going to vary from label to label. Some labels have um, that philosophy, and like some don't. Like some have like a different approach that's kind of a little bit more geared towards like digital distribution. So yeah, it's like there are challenges with both. Yeah, it's more just like whatever it's horses for courses.
Yeah. I think a lot of the vinyl only labels are now starting to release the vinyl and then also put it on Bandcamp because
Mm,
then at least the artist is going to get the money from that release and then at least it is available digitally but not via the big platforms like Beatport. And I think that kind
mm.
of preserves some of the uniqueness, I guess, if you want to say, of that release. Um, maybe that's something that the way music is going to go. I don't know, but
Yeah,
I
I've
definitely
noticed
see
that as
vinyl coming
well.
back.
It absolutely is. Like I'm a big fan. Like more from like a collector, partly as a collector, and then partly just as like a DJ. I think it's important for like especially as we move into this like the digital age is well and truly here, but like digital DJing is like taking over, and it ruins the experience. It kind of honestly it kind of sucks now. Like going back to that like the old school way of doing things, it definitely puts DJing into perspective. And you definitely like you don't take for granted like the waveforms as much, and like I guess like the actual like the art of DJing. And honestly, I'm a little worried with the direction of DJing. Like I don't know if you've seen. I, I'm not too sure what it's called, but like I think Beatport has a platform where you don't even need to buy your songs anymore. You can just like pay a subscription and play music over Wi-Fi via this like I don't know Beatport platform. And I kind of worry about like how the quality of DJ sets moving forward. Like if that's it's already pretty easy. Like I'm not gonna lie. Like to DJ nowadays, you just rock up to a club with like a USB and a set of headphones. You just buy a bunch of tracks from like Bandcamp, like Beatport, whatever. It's got all the metadata there already. It's got the album artwork. You don't even have to like actually know your music. You can just recognize an artwork. You just kind of know the track's gonna come in after 30 seconds or a minute, and then you can mix out of it after like 2.5 minutes or 3 minutes, and round and round you go. But like vinyl DJ makes it a lot harder because you need to know your records a lot better. You need to um, like the actual like the uh, like the actual process of like putting a record on is a lot more difficult as well. You might like miss your cue point, and then you have to like like for the next one, or work out a way to bring it in earlier. Um, you might have like sweaty hands, and then like I don't know. Like I'm just trying to think because like
No, no,
there's so many things that can go like can affect like the performance of like when you're DJing with vinyls, but like it kind of adds to the fun of it.
agreed. Yeah,
And I think from a crowd perspective, I think they kind of appreciate it a little bit more. I know, like me personally, I can't, it's kind of weird, but I enjoy DJ sets more when they're less like when there are mistakes because you kind of know that the art, like the person standing behind the decks is actually kind of putting a little bit more. Well, they might be putting a little bit more into it. They're not just like phoning it in and just playing just like really easy music to play. They've actually kind of like maybe spent a little bit more time selecting records or yeah. So I really appreciate that.
I think my listeners are probably going to get bored of this topic because it keeps coming up on every single podcast. But um, I guess with vinyl DJing, like you've said and alluded to, you have to 100% know those records. And how do you know the record? Well, you have to sit there and you have to listen to it from start to finish, and you have to understand, and you have to literally physically listen to the record, which is what music's all about. You're supposed to listen to it from start to finish. It's a piece of art. You'll know this. You make music. I make music. You put 100% effort into everything from the start of that track to the end of it. So you want people to appreciate that. But yeah, I agree with you. I'm kind of a bit scared of where things are going to go because already I was a little bit uncomfortable with the fact that you can just buy a track for $1 on Beatport and then listen to 30 seconds of it and then play it out once and forget about it. You don't do that with records because it's a tangible item. And I think it also teaches the importance of track selection, which I'm a really big proponent of. I've never been the best mixer in the world, but you know what? My track selection's on point, and I pride myself by that. And I think that's something that more people need to learn how to do. Um,
Mm.
would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. And it's something that like I think about so often, so much as well. Like I spend so much time while DJing, like constantly critiquing like the tunes I'm playing, like whether or not they're totally suitable or whether or not it's like too cheesy or like what. Yeah, like I spend so much time thinking about it. There's another point that you kind of, or like while you were speaking, something that I considered as well, and that's if people aren't buying music anymore, there's definitely like less of an income stream for the actual people, like the people making the music, like the actual producers, like the artists. That's a really big thing as well. Um, like there's virtually zero there's zero revenue for artists like via like streaming platforms unless you're like a mega pop star. So I think that's just going to diminish even more, which is yeah, it's sad and it's kind of scary to think about. Like there would be artists out there who make like they're not rolling in it, but they're making like okay money from like digital sales, and that's gonna if this is the way things are going, it'll definitely dry up.
Yeah, 100%. But speaking about the 5 year release, just to sort of wrap the conversation up, because I know you're obviously strapped for time today, Dan. So the 5 years of Milk Crate is a various artists EP, I presume. How many artists are on there?
We haven't actually finalized the number of artists yet. There are four at the moment. I wanted five or six, but yeah, we've had like yeah, like it. Even though like we've got like the release date and the artwork all finalized, we're still just trying to like work out. We're trying to get as many like past artists on there as possible. So yeah, I'm hoping to not exclude anybody I wanted on there, but like for one reason or another, if an artist can't be on there, then it is what it is. But at the moment, we've got four signed.
So am I the only new artist on there?
Yeah, you are.
Well, thanks for that, Dan. I appreciate it. um, cool. Okay. Well, Dan, thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. I guess I just want to sort of round it up by something that I tend to ask a lot of people. So, two things. So, with you being a producer, if there was one thing that you could tell your younger self or your earlier producer self now, what would it be?
Uh, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. Uh, like there are definitely things I would do differently and that I would tell myself. I don't know if it's necessarily like the best advice to give. It probably contradicts all other advice every other person has ever given, but I would say like maybe be a little bit more selective with the music you release. Like it's stuff that goes up on SoundCloud doesn't really matter too much, but like the kind of music that you're signing and that you're like putting out there that's a little bit more permanent. I think you need to be a little bit more selective with, particularly if you're an artist that uses like your real name or like a name that is like associated to like the real person, because it's going to be out there forever. And then you might sort of look back, after like 5 or 6 years and question why you released music like that genre of music, or like maybe like the quality wasn't at a standard you were happy with. So that's definitely something that's advice I would give my younger self. And then also maybe just like spending a little bit more time like going out, like going to parties where they're playing the music that you're enjoying, because you consume music totally differently when you're at like a party as opposed to like hearing something online, like say like on SoundCloud, or digging through like YouTube videos or like through Discogs or whatever. So it's gonna, yeah, that's definitely uh, totally undervalued. I think like the importance of hearing music live as opposed to just like hearing it like in the studio or like in like at home. I think, yeah, like this is something that I think about all the time when I'm at gigs. Like there are songs that I hear and then I'll Shazam, and I will have come across them online and kind of just slept on them because they didn't really have the vibe of the song just didn't really come through well on, say, like in the car or on my AirPods or like on my studio monitors. But in like in a on a proper rig in like a big room, it sounds totally different. So um, yeah, those are the two pieces of advice: be a little bit more selective with what you put out there, and spend more time listening to music live.
Cool, man. Yeah, that's really good advice. I would second that. There's literally 50 more questions that I could ask you, Dan, and so much more stuff that I want to talk to you about with production, but obviously got to let you go. So, look, you've done a mix for us today, or you're about to do a mix for us at some point. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about the mix that you've done for us today, and why you've chosen the tracks you've chosen?
Yeah, totally. Well, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's been selected is what I'm playing at the moment. There are a lot of Milk Crate releases, like past and a few upcoming ones. Some of my own stuff as well, which I'm excited for you guys to hear. Yeah, I mean, it's basically just stuff that I'm vibing at the moment, stuff that's working really well at my gigs, stuff that I've heard in like friends video, like that I've heard friends play in videos on social media that I've been looking forward to playing as well. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it.
I'm sure they will. Cool. Thanks, guys, for listening. Thanks, Dan, for joining, and enjoy Dan's mix.